Hey, Nick, I've got a great idea for a fantastic new show.
Okay.
Let's talk about books we haven't read.
Okay, yes. Unfinished literary as Feck.
Right.
Okay. So you know what we should do after that? We should do one about books we haven't read any of. Like, we just talk about what we've heard, like down the pub or
I think it's train. What the world needs, right?
Or we just try to figure out maybe what that book's about, just from context clues. Anyway, yes. So this week, this is brand new. I think there might have been things before that I didn't finish. Maybe I can't remember. Was there anything before that we did?
No, this is definitely the first time.
Okay.
And not having finished in time. Actually gave up on.
Well, you gave up on. I will probably actually finish it just because I'm somewhat interested in knowing how this thing ends. But I got a bit further into it.
It's also you have more tolerance for the
made up names and that stuff. There was a few moments where I was like, this is gonna cause Clive to glaze over, because I mean,
right.
Particularly the parts that were like, oh, this is a fairy tale or a story from this world that's a made-up place. I was like, because there's these interstitial chapters that sometimes show up, and it just made me think, yeah, I don't think Clive's going to get on very well with this.
Right.
But yes, what we are talking about is Ursula K. Le Guin's The Left Hand of Darkness. It was a Hugo and Nebula award-winning book, but Clive does not care about the Hugos or the Nebulas.
Well, not if this is the kind of thing that wins them.
They give awards to, yeah.
I'm sorry. It makes it sound as if I hate it. I didn't hate this book. It's just this book has such a reputation. And Ursula K. Le Guin, this is the second Ursula K. Le Guin book I've actually given up on.
Okay.
The other one I tried to read was The Lathe of Heaven, which was better than this.
Okay.
In fact, it was quite good, but it was just I don't need this in my life, so I didn't bother finishing.
Okay.
Nothing against it. And similar with this, I'm sure if I did read it through to completion, and so in my case, it was a mixture of, if I had been reading this not for the show, I read about half of it. If I was, I probably would have read about 40% of it if it was on my own time. Okay. And then when it was coming, we're getting close to the recording date, I could have finished it just to talk about it, if I'd have just, a 2-hour kind of sit down and just read the whole thing. But there's no way this could have kept my attention for 2 hours. If I'd have known it was going to be a bit of a drudge, I would have finished it, but I'd have needed like 30 days to read it in 10-minute increments or something like that. But I didn't expect that, because it has such a reputation. I thought, oh no, this is not going to be a chore.
Going to grab you and
right.
Yeah. So 1969 is when this was originally published. Ace Mass Market. Although it's funny, this is a very boring front cover.
That is.
I suspect that the original Ace 1969 cover is a lot. I haven't Googled this, but I suspect it's a lot more interesting looking than this. And this is a general tendency in books that I'd like to just, stake an uncontroversial claim. I hate this kind of crap. Right. These found photographs, just, give me a good old fashioned painting of like something spacey, and I will be much happier.
Yeah, preferably with a lizard monster of some kind of creeping into frame.
Yes.
Someone in one of those, a female astronaut in one of those weird spacesuits they used to draw, which like somehow had cleavage. I don't know quite how it works in space, but paperback covers of the old days.
But a big giant bubble helmet on as well.
Yeah.
So this, as you said, this book does have quite a reputation. It's part of a series of books I think she wrote around the same time, kind of maybe connected, but I can't speak to that much because I don't know much other than I think I've only read The Dispossessed, which is another book that she wrote about a guy who, it kind of the same general idea of she has this thing of like stranger in a strange land, these characters who've grown up in one social surroundings or whatever, and then they're placed in a new world where the rules are different.
Right.
It's obviously a trope that Ursula K. Le Guin was interested in. And in the case of that one, I read it because of it has an anarchist connection. It would have been when I was reading that kind of stuff. And it was also supposed to be in part a response to a book that we should have read. Did we not? What our plans was to read The Possessed, wasn't it?
Yeah, I'm still reading
Demons.
it very, very slowly.
By Dostoevsky, yeah. So it was a riposte. It was like an answer to that book. That's why it was called The Dispossessed, because one of the titles of English titles of that book by Dostoevsky is Possessed. Right. Anyhow, in that book, it was kind of a guy who'd grown up in an anarchist society who gets dumped on basically a capitalist kind of planet, and he misreads a lot of social cues and gets in various trouble and stuff. This one, it's a bit Star Trek-y, actually. It's funny, and I was thinking about when this was written, 69, like, because in a way that there's this character called the Envoy, who has come from this kind of United Federation of Planets type of a thing. Out there in the galaxy. He's not the first person to visit this planet. They send these investigators first, and they kind of get the lay of the land. They do it all undercover, and then he's been sent to make an official hi, welcome. We're a bunch of planets in a league.
Right.
Would you like to join our league? Would you be interested in joining?
Yeah.
And so the ecumenical thing was interesting because there's a vaguely religious aspect to this that I don't know if they get into because I have read about 2/3 of this, so I don't know ultimately where this is going, but there is this kind of quasi-religious element to his mission, it seems to me. I don't know, did you get that? Maybe. It's not a big thing, but it seemed like it was.
I suppose, yeah, you don't go throwing around words like ecumenical for no reason, right? So surely it's surely it's in there, I think. I don't think you're reading that into it where it's not there.
Right. And so this planet is marked by two major things. One is that it's really freaking cold, and that the Earth word for this planet is winter, because it's freezing, and it seems to have like a bit like in what's his name? George R.R. Martin's thing, right?
Game of Thrones.
Like Game of Thrones, yeah, where this planet seems to have an abnormally long winter, maybe, and then shorter other seasons, right?
Ursula K. Le Guin is clearly a big influence on him as well, isn't she?
I suspect so, yeah. And
Didn't
so,
she also, sorry, did she also write some? Or is there someone else I'm thinking of who wrote the kind of Conans that were made from bits and pieces that Robert E. Howard left behind? Is that someone else? That's not Ursula K. Le Guin, is it?
I don't know. There was L. Sprague de Camp.
Oh yes, that's who I was thinking of. Yes. Yeah.
But it's great, the things that are in my brain that are taking up space, like important knowledge, like.
Well, it was useful there that one time. So.
Okay. So yeah. But she did. I guess you should say maybe the one other thing that I think she's probably best known for is writing the Earth-Sea cycle, like the Wizard of Earthsea, and one of which was sort of adapted, or a few of which were adapted into the movie. Tales from Earthsea, the Studio Ghibli movie. Right,
which I like. That's good.
I like that too. We were talking about it. I've mostly seen the English dub for some reason. I don't know if I've ever seen the Japanese dub, but the villain, the kind of the wizarding villain, the kind of creepy white looking dude with the long black hair, is voiced by Willem Dafoe.
You mean Voldemort?
Yeah, basically.
Right.
That's the one. But anyhow, so on this world, the two main things that seem to mark it are that there's a really long winter, and there's two different societies that we've been introduced to in the book. There's one which is, I guess it's like a monarchy, and it's a bit more capitalistic-y seeming, and then there's another which is a bit more communist-y and bureaucratic. It's not a monarchy, but he's landed in this more capitalistic-y monarchy place.
Capitalistically is a proper word as well, isn't it?
I believe it is. Yes.
Right.
And so he's got this weird relationship. This whole thing about kind of not losing face. There's like a name for this kind of honor code, which seems a bit inspired by maybe Japanese stuff. It was, there's these things where I feel like she's pulling these different threads from different places. That one seemed to me vaguely like he never knows whether he's insulting people or they're being insulting to him, or there's this whole weird element of this culture of not losing face. And then when he goes to the other part of this world, they seem to kind of hand wave that, like they'll wave that away. We're going to wave that. It has a made up name that I don't remember, and it's not important.
A lot of made up bollocks.
Well, that's science fiction.
Well,
so then
it's not. It's this science fiction fantasy crossover thing.
Hybrid. Okay.
I think is.
Although if you set things on alien words, they're going to have alien names, surely.
No, there's different. You know, it's that thing. You know it when you see it, right? But there is a difference.
All right. Thanks for that very specific.
Well, you call something. I don't know. The plan, a planet. I don't know. Think of a good planet name. Come on.
Bogdor.
No. See, that's where you fell.
Okay.
That's fantasy name.
Okay. All right.
It's
So a good non.
It has to be something more futuristic and technical sounding. You've done the thing which this book does. Is it conflates medieval fantasy with sci-fi, right? Okay. And that's
so. Come on then, Clive. Give us your technical science. What?
Well, no, that's the thing. It takes a while to think of a good one.
Right? I see.
But you can come up with Bogdo. Anyone can say Bogdo in a few seconds, right?
So that's an easy out when you don't have to fucking come up with anything.
Right.
But anyway, you'll get back to me next episode. That's your homework then, Clive. You come back next episode
with a good planet name,
with a great planet name that.
Okay, I'll definitely be doing that.
Doesn't sound like made up malarkey.
Okay. Hang on, let me write good planet name for Nick.
Okay, and then we'll use it in a short film that we'll make.
Right.
So anyway,
Mars.
Great. Yes, named after a god from our planet. So it can't be part of some. It can't be part of some Terran empire. No, you can't. It can't be part of some human Terran. No, I mean, go to science, sure, but don't go to history or mythology, because that's no different than what I just did. Because Bogdor, for all you know, could be an ancient Mesopotamian, hearth god. So anyway, back to what we were saying about this is turning out to be a better episode than I thought it was for a book we never read.
This is turning out to be a worse episode than I thought.
No, you're wrong. You're wrong.
This is the Bogdor of episodes. This is.
Anyhow, so I mean, let's just dispense with this because we don't know how it ends. But basically, he gets kicked out of the one country, ends up in the other one, pisses everybody off for some reason because everyone's vaguely threatened by the idea of a space union that's out there on a planet that they're like, well, we don't want to join, and also we didn't really want to know you existed at all. And everyone's trying to leverage. There's a lot of political machinations. And at the part I'm at, our envoy has been booted out into some sort of like, not unlike the camp in The Joke, except it's really, really, really cold. But he's in some sort of communist labor camp now, freezing. People are dying all around him. And our prime minister character, who was also kicked out for treason, is going to bust him out for reasons we don't fully understand. That's where we're at.
I'm bored even just thinking about the.
Okay.
I mean, yeah, this is. I don't know what it is that's so boring about this book, but it's fucking hell. It just. I seem I'd be reading it for pages and pages and pages, and then I would.
I could sense you glazing over across the ocean. I was like, Clive is just. There's like a film of glaze that's just he's read 9 pages and doesn't know what happened. He's gone back and he doesn't care enough to read. He's like, no, if I didn't take it in that time, I'm not going to take it in a second time.
Because I won't. I know. Because I'll go back. It'll happen again.
It'll glide off of your brain.
And the thing is, the reason it's so frustrating is because it has like. I read the version I read. The Kindle has an introduction by URSULA LeGUIN.
Right. And I never even mentioned the other thing. That's probably why it's famous.
Yes,
anyway,
we get to that as well. Yeah. But the introduction was really interesting, and she talks about that thing, and we'll talk about that's another wasted opportunity as well. We'll get to that. And she talks a really good game. When I was reading the intro and her talking more broadly about, how science fiction can work and stuff like that, I thought, oh, this introduction is really good. This introduction is really interesting. This is going to be a good book. Finally, I didn't get on with this with LeGUIN last time, but maybe this is my opportunity. Good. I'm always glad to find I was thinking, oh, great. I'll probably have to read all the Earthseas, and then I'll watch the Ghibli thing again after watching. And I thought, oh yeah, okay, this is going to go down this, But the book, just all the stuff she says that sounds interesting, and she talks about the way you should write something like this to make it interesting. She seems to have not followed her own rules, and this just reads very. I don't know if it's to do with it being one of the first or of its kind or something like that. I really can't figure out why this has such a reputation, because I could think of a half dozen other things that read exactly like it. Like, do you know what I mean? It's not. It doesn't have that elevated, like, I thought it was going to be like these other things, but this is how it's done properly. Like, this is how this thing is supposed to read, right? But this just seems very bog standard to me. Like, I couldn't help it. Like, I wanted, I was looking for what is it that sets it apart in people's, and clearly it is, apart in people's minds. People do think it's a high watermark, right? I could not normally. You can kind of see it, right? Like, even if something's dated now, and you can kind of see, okay, this isn't for me, but I can kind of see why people who like this kind of bollocks like this, right? But with this, I couldn't even. And again, it's not terrible. It's just thoroughly average. Did you have a totally different take on it?
No, I don't. No, but I also don't think I didn't struggle with it the way that you struggled with it either. So, I will reserve judgment until I finish the book.
Okay.
Okay. So yeah, so we'll see. I'll let you know in person
for a podcast about where we judge books.
Yeah, well, no, I mean, that's the nature of not having finished the book. But also, I do think that good science fiction is, it's the exploration of ideas, right? I mean, it can be. You can have both, right? You can have your space opera, which is great, and you can have your lofty ideals, which is great. I ideally like it sometimes when people mash it up, like the Harry Harrisons of this world, right? Where I think he often could somehow do both. You could get your breezy, two fists, a blazing kind of thing, with usually some kind of idea, right? Whether it was societal, or whether it's religious, or whether it's whatever it is, ecological. So here,
let's speak of seeing as with let's speak of what is the big idea here, right? What is the
which is funny because at this point in the book it still feels kind of underexplored, so I don't know where it's all going, right? So or if it is going anywhere, because that's what I guess what would have been most surprising at the time is that she's introduced the species that is on this planet, the dominant species of humanoids, are non-binary. They are androgynous, and that they only develop primary sexual characteristics, I guess, in moments of needing to mate. And then there's like a hormonal thing that goes on where basically, depending on your hormones, you either develop male or female genitalia. So that one person could be the father of some children and the mother of other children, depending on where they were in this state when they had sex. And that sex is basically prescribed just to these moments. It's a bit I know you're not a Star Trek person, but there's Spock has these moments of like where he goes into like spawning frenzy in the original like 1960s, where he's really got to get laid. Otherwise he'll like die. And so there's an element you know, and otherwise it's completely
That old
asexual.
line.
Yeah, that's the one. Yes, that's the one. I will die.
Sorry to bother you, but I'm gonna die if you don't have sex with me. So
yes,
you know, you're gonna feel pretty guilty. So you better, take him off.
Yeah.
Um,
well, Gene Roddenberry was apparently a piece of work, but yeah. So yeah, this is just an element of this. And so I mean, one of the like, because you know, there's always that like kill your mothers, kill your fathers thing that happens with any thing like this. You know, she came under increasing fire later in life over the fact that she did not use non-binary pronouns in the book, right? Like people were like, well, why, if you invented a non-binary species, why are you not using they, them pronouns or something else, some made up malarkey pronoun, as, you know, per science fiction, you know, instead, primarily the word he is used throughout the book. So, you know, for this androgynous race of people.
That also speaks to something like, for me, that my problem with this element of the book is, and again, we haven't finished it, so of course it might develop, but it just seems so underdeveloped. It seems like something that should be integral to the story, or something. I mean, you don't again, in her introduction, you know, it sounds as if you don't put something like that in a book for no good, like, you know, that's a starting point to explore all sorts of interesting things, right? But thus far into the book, it's introduced,
background.
And then someone just pretty much just goes, like, and that's it, right? Like, okay, wait, okay, that's that's. So it will be interesting. I would be interesting to find out. Not by reading it, heavens.
I'll let you know.
By getting you to read it, let me know. Does that actually develop into anything?
Does it pay off? Yeah, no, I will, because I'm genuinely interested to see if it has a payoff or not. Because it seems weird if it doesn't, just because I think some of the reputation of the book is weighted on this whole element of this non-binary species and this getting beyond gender in a way, right?
And it's another thing. The other thing that strikes me in general about this book is, I know, you know, it's the whole thing about, you know, science fiction isn't really about the future. It's always about now, right? You just kind of use it as a kind of vehicle to discuss things, right? But this seems like that doesn't seem well enough disguised to me. It's the same problem I have with Game of Thrones. Like, again, nothing wrong with Game of Thrones, but I think I read half of the first Game of Thrones book.
Okay.
And I was like, you know what? This is basically stories about warring medieval dynasties.
Yes. Yeah.
But it's just got some dragons in it as well, right?
Yes.
And I was just thinking, you know what? I think I'd rather just read a book about these actual warring medieval. I don't really need the, you know, goblins and crap like that on the top. So so it just seems like this is very much like that as well. Like it's barely science fiction to me. See, it's barely science fiction at all. I don't know what it is.
But now I feel I'm confused, because I feel like you were complaining it's too science fiction earlier on in this very same podcast. No.
I didn't say it was too. I said it was too.
Oh, sorry, fantasy science fiction hybrid.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes. Okay.
So again, I think it's a case of just it's just not. It's not for me more than. I mean, I do have problems with the book, which I think are legitimate grievances, but I don't feel qualified to really, because I didn't get to the end of the book for a start, and also it's not for me, right? And I think it's more for you than it is for me, right? You have more of a tolerance or interest in this kind of stuff, right?
Yeah, and also to some degree in this era, I think, of science fiction as well, because in a way I do feel like this kind of 50s, 60s, 70s science fiction, there is an attempt being made, I guess, that maybe earlier science fiction to some degree is more straight up and down adventure based, right? Which is lots of fun, right? We've read some of it already, right? Like Lensman, that kind of thing, right? You know, and it's tons of fun. And then later science fiction, I mean, I don't know like what people were writing in the 90s. And I mean, other than like endless Star Trek and like Star Wars novelization things, like I don't know what there, I mean, surely there was idea-based science fiction.
I think, to be honest, I think you might be being slightly unfair. I think those kind of idea-based, I think probably goes back a little bit further than you might imagine. Or like you said, it's disguised, right? It's smuggled in the guise of, like you said, the Harry Harrison kind of more, you know.
Yeah, sure.
But you're talking about, I think what you're trying to say maybe is, are you trying to say things that are a bit more earnestly heart on sleeve, idea based?
Yeah, I think so. And right. And I don't think that that's a bad thing.
No, I don't think it's a bad thing either, but I think it's something that is very difficult to pull off well. And it also strikes me as one of those things, like, there are certain things that happen every now and again in the arts, I think, where it's an idea that's time has come and no one had done it before, or people didn't do that kind of, and it needed to be done. But once you get through it, it's almost worthless now, because we needed to do that to break up that monopoly. And once you're the other side of it, it's very difficult to see value in the thing that came along, because we live in post that world now. And as much as you try, it's very difficult to imagine what things will. So I can see.
But you can vicariously get the excitement of.
I can't.
But I can.
Okay.
Well, maybe not in this book, but I mean, like you can, if I go back and listen to Nevermind the Bollocks, I can still vicariously get the excitement of that moment in time when, like, people were like, oh my God, it's the end of the world. These foul-mouthed yobs have released a pretty decent rock and roll album, which doesn't sound, to my ears anymore, particularly
raucous, right? No,
it sounds like a good stripped down rock and roll.
That's what I mean. Right? It's almost impossible. It's almost impossible to hear it with those ears, right? To actually,
no, you can't.
To actually hear,
but to me, it's
and like, it's like it. To some people when it was new, that would have been like Merzbow or something, right? That would have been full kind of noise. And that's what I'm saying. I don't think you are responding to Nevermind the Bollocks in the same way as people were the same.
I don't think I am either. But I still think I can get an echo, a vicarious thrill in a way. And to me, the music still has energy. There's still
that's what I'm saying. So I think that might be the difference. So maybe not necessarily, but say, let's take some other classic punk records, right? They no longer violate your eardrums, but like you said, they're good rock and roll records. And I think that's because they always were. Whereas what I'm talking about is something like this, which.
So you find unsatisfying as a novel.
Yeah,
like it's not okay.
Everything about it is whatever taboo breaking or epoch changing or whatever.
You pull that out, you find that the story. Yeah. The story itself is not something that.
Exactly. I suspect that this wasn't ever actually a really good novel.
Right.
I suspect. But then again, even if it was, I wouldn't appreciate it because I don't like this kind of rubbish anyway. So yeah, so it's it's kind of pointless really for me to talk about a book that I probably would have never enjoyed, and I haven't even finished it. So this, for me, this is certainly the most redundant episode of the show we've ever done. But that's fine. I mean,
but this was something we talked way long ago. We talked about the day would come when we would make a decision whether or not to talk about something that we didn't or couldn't finish.
Yes, and
the day has come.
Yeah, well, it's organically happened. I mean, it's slightly different for me. I just, I can't be finishing it. Yours is just a poor time management.
Yeah, well, Irishman. Insert your own jokes.
But luckily, because I don't give a shit, I don't mind. If I have got on with this book,
you would have been infuriated if it had turned out today that you had finished it and I hadn't.
Yeah, I would have insisted. No, you have to read this as well. I'm not dying alone. I'm not suffering
Yeah,
alone.
although I will remind you that you, that Lensman book we read, I read one that was twice as long, and everything that was added to it was awful.
Right.
You read some magazine goddamn copy of it that was like
Yeah.
a quarter of the length and a breezy. So, you know, it's not like.
I still fondly remember that. I think I'm still a few points ahead of you. If we're keeping score, which of course we are.
Yeah.
So anyway,
anyhow.
is there anything, I mean, I do apologize, listeners, as well, because we have kind of slightly rambled a bit. This is fairly rambly, but is there anything you actually feel you haven't said about this book that you would like to bring up?
No, I don't think so. I think I'm good.
So you will be finishing it?
I will, yeah.
Okay.
So if you really want a PS, I can, the end of our next episode, I can give a 2-minute summation of my actual thoughts about the book as it pertains to it having an ending and all of that.
Well, let's put it this way. If you just finish the book and you feel as if you have a very different take on it, then it'll probably be worth adding a little bonus bit. But if your opinion doesn't change, or if it just kind of, then
we can leave it where it is.
But I'm curious to know. Again, not curious enough to actually read it, but I suppose I could read it 5 minutes a day for the next 5 years or something.
Don't worry about it, Clive. Don't worry about it.
But
I'll take care of it for you.
Chewing hay or something, you know, like cud or
Right. Yeah. Goes to one of your many other stomachs, and then comes back.
So anyway, that's it. Bye.
Yes, we're done.